Greetings, conservatives. This is your humble host, John Moraga, and we are back with more ConservaCast. We look forward to keeping you informed with the latest and most relevant commentary of conservative issues. So without further ado, here are a few topics I'd like to discuss.
Hey folks, you'll have to forgive me for not providing video to this ConservaCast, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there today because once again, I am furious. If you watched the previous ConservaCast, you'll know that I was livid for the Supreme Court doing what they did, and I won't get into that now. If you want to see it, please watch the other ConservaCast. But today I am outraged at what's going on. Now, I'm not outraged as though all hope is lost. Obviously, as I said in the last ConservaCast, and for many of you conservatives out there, no, our hope is in God Almighty. So I don't place my faith or my hope in any secular government or what's going on in this world. But because we live in this world and we can't detach ourselves and we are here for a time, obviously, I know what's going on. And it's been going on now for over a week with these rioters, these looters, these criminals, these thugs, so to speak. Now, I'll put the required caveat out there. I do not approve of what happened to the victim of George Floyd. I think it was horrendous. I think it was horrible. I think the cops are justly being indicted, and they are going through the system. Now, all of that stipulated. I don't mean to undermine that. Please do not think I am undermining that. But as many of you have also understood, what's happening right now is not a result of what happened with George Floyd. These riots, these looters, these thugs are not acting out of any type of plea for justice. They've hijacked this understandable outrage into a whole other realm. Now, what I want to talk about primarily is the Second Amendment, arming ourselves. Please, I might sound conspiratorial, I might sound hyperbolic, but by all means, if you do not own a firearm, please purchase a firearm. Now, my personal prediction is that these riots and protests will probably subside in the next few days. I could be wrong. I could be coming back on saying, oh my goodness, we're in week 2, 3, 4, 5 week, the second month of these riots, and just Rome is burning down. But my sense is in the next few days, we may see the tide turn back to some type of normalcy, whatever that might mean in these days. But that does not negate what I'm trying to urge all of you to do. Please, please, please buy a firearm. Now, for those of you who may have read one of my recent articles, Hell Hath No Fury Like a Second Amendment Activist, I encourage you to check out that article. And I explained in there in pretty good detail what my experience was in buying my most recent firearm. Now, I am an Air Force Security Forces veteran. For those of you who don't know, the Security Forces of the Air Force is essentially military police for the Air Force. It's one of the very few combat-related career fields in the Air Force. When people think of the Air Force, they typically think of some type of administrative or intellectual or some other type of career field or involvement in the military. They don't typically think of the Air Force as having combat-related career fields, but the security forces are, in fact, a very involved combat-related career field. And it required me to be trained in large arms and small arms, the M60 machine gun, the M203 grenade launcher, all of these different types of things, as well as small arms. And so my point is just that I was very much, I became very familiar with a lot of different types of firearms. And for 4 years during my enlistment, that's all that I basically did, as I was military police, for lack of a better term, but for those of you who aren't familiar. I was involved in types of different security measures, law enforcement measures, and being familiar with firearms. When I got out in 2001, that was basically the last that I had been involved with firearms. So almost fast forward 20 years later, I go and try and buy a firearm at my local gun shop. Now, mind you, I live in the state of California. For almost 20 years, I did not have any need or desire to go purchase a firearm, even for sport. And I didn't think at the time I'd need it for protection. I got married, I had children, and that need became even greater. And so finally, I decided to go to a gun shop. I said, okay, well, what's the process? How do I go through this process? What do I need to do? I've been almost 2 decades removed from even handling a firearm, much less having it in my home and having it as a part of my Second Amendment right. Well, I go in there and the gun shop owner is telling me, well, first of all, you need to go through a background check. Okay, well, whatever. You need to go through a background check. Then I say, okay, well, I'm used to as a small arms. I'm not over there trying to get an M16 or M60 machine or whatever. I'm just trying to get a small arms. The M9 Beretta, the 9mm Beretta, that was the standard issue for security forces and for a lot of career fields in the military. The standard small arms was a 9mm Beretta. So I asked the guy, I say, okay, well, here's what I want to do. I'll go through all that process, the background. And he says, I says, okay, so the standard is a for each magazine, 15 rounds, correct? He says, oh, no. Recently, they've passed legislation that limits it to only 10 rounds. I was beside myself. What in the world is he talking about? 10 rounds? 10 rounds? Are you kidding me? I'm used to 15 rounds and one in the chamber as a standard issue. You're on your go. And even those 15 rounds can easily be dispersed, even with 2 magazines. So I now have to get only 10 rounds in a magazine. And I don't want to go into it. It's going to make me even more livid. I said, okay, fine. I'll go through the process. I'll get the 9mm. I'll get the magazines. Fine. I'll have to probably just get more magazines and add more bullets into it and more rounds so that I have them available. But that's beside the point. My point is, I was determined to get myself a firearm. I have a wife and children now that I need to and want to protect, and I have a right to do so. That was late last year that I started that process. Moving into 2020, after this COVID thing and the recent week or two, we now have riots on the streets and a lot of major cities around the country. Unfortunately, I'm about to say something that might be a bit controversial on 2 ways. I have 2 perspectives on this, but the main one that I think a lot of you will understand and be able to empathize with is that there are rioters who are overwhelming the police forces, who are overwhelming the Secret Service. The police forces are no longer taking a stance of being proactive and essentially bowing down and submitting to the rioters. Not all. I'll put that caveat out there. Not all. But a lot and too many of the police forces are just submitting and giving into the rioters. Now, to their defense, what are they supposed to do, even if they were far more proactive, which they're starting to get to? But are they supposed to jail hundreds or thousands of people for doing what they're doing? I understand they're in a predicament. I understand they're being outnumbered. I get that. But all the more reason, folks, all the more reason that I am encouraging you to buy a firearm. Please buy a firearm. If your police department can no longer protect you and guarantee your safety, or at least secure it no police force can actually guarantee your safety, but if they can no longer have some type of security that they will do what they can to protect you, you need to protect yourselves. God forbid anybody try and come up on my wife or children now. Not only do I now have a firearm that was acquired last year and passed all the necessary background and did what I need to do, I actually can draw on my 4 years of military training to engage any perpetrator, to reasonably and responsibly engage that threat. Now, obviously, I know not all of you had that training or experience, but the times that we are living in, the situation we find ourselves in, is that if the Secret Service, who protects the commander in chief and the leader of the free world, are getting injured and are getting hurt on the job trying to protect him, and if local law enforcement are being overwhelmed, you better believe you have a right to protect yourself and your family. Please arm yourself. Go through the process. Whatever state you're in, California has some of the strictest gun laws that are out there. Now, here's the controversial part that I want to say that has kind of been on my mind that I've been reflecting on. I consider myself an objective person. I consider myself somebody who oftentimes can see both sides of a situation. Whether I agree with both sides or whether I have a bias towards one side or not is beside the point. I think I'd like to believe that I have the ability to at least consider those sides. Now, that being said, the other side to this, that liberals, the far left, would actually be like, yeah, listen to this guy. He knows what he's talking about. The other side is this kind of, in a way, diffuses the paranoia. That's a strong word because it's not paranoia. There's grounds for it. The concern. I'll use that word concern. What we're seeing in the news right now and what we're seeing being played out kind of dispels some of the concerns that we on the right, conservatives, have about the government trying to take away our guns. Now, I could parse this argument out. I could play devil's advocate on both sides, but I'm just food for thought. Think about this. I don't think a lot of conservatives are considering this. If the masses who are not armed with guns, all of these liberal thugs and hippies and all of these pot smokers or whatever, I don't want to diminish pot smokers. There are actually some Republican conservative pot smokers out there, but you get my point. If all of these just anti-government, left-winger people out there can overwhelm the police force, how much more so would an organized, armed, conservative population be able to do to these forces? God forbid, now that's assuming that these police forces wind up taking on a type of martial law. Now, obviously, we're seeing a debate right now with the president whether or not he'll activate the active duty military to do this, whether we're going to enter some type of phase of actual martial law. But all of this is being played out with a group of people or groups of people who are, for the most part, not armed with actual firearms. Now, I understand they are armed with bricks, with bottles, with concrete, with cement, with rocks. I get that. But I'm talking about law-abiding conservatives who are sane and who have a reasonable understanding of the world around us. If we were to become organized and we were to have our firearms, I think it would be an exponential threat to any type of state imposing martial law or trying to overwhelm us and, if you will, take our guns away. Now, again, I'm saying this out of an attempt to see both sides. It's something I think that a lot of conservatives, even if they have considered, aren't vocalizing. I want to vocalize this. Consider this, people. If an unarmed mob is able to intimidate the actual government, the state, how much more so are we able to? Would we be able to organize and intimidate them to say, wait a minute, do you guys really want to go up against an armed population who is just as upset, if not more upset, about what might be going on in society? God forbid we hit that moment. God forbid it comes to that. But in trying to be objective, it kind of undermines our argument that the government is coming after our guns and will stop at nothing to achieve that goal. Now, before anybody starts throwing rocks at me figuratively, not literally, I get there are stories, there are instances where there are police forces who do go and unjustly take guns from people's homes. Trust me, I get that. I live in California. I see those stories frequently. I get that. But I'm talking about on a mass scale. And that's actually what a lot of conservatives may be talking about or getting to ready in the distant future or even in the near future. There are a lot of conservatives who are saying if that should happen, we need to be ready. We need to be prepared. And I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. Because God forbid somebody try and harm my wife or my children. That's a whole nother level. But I'm just saying something to consider on a mass level. The ability for an unarmed population to intimidate the established law enforcement structure, whether it's civilian, local, or National Guard or federal active duty. It's just something to consider that, well, if we really get organized, and at the very least, it might be encouragement for conservatives for us to be able to even further double down on our advocacy for the Second Amendment, to say, do you guys really want to go up against an organized, law-abiding, armed population? If you guys are being basically intimidated and you guys have to succumb to an unarmed mob, how much more will an armed population be a threat? So, I am encouraging everybody here, if you are not armed, by all means, get armed. Find a local gun shop, go through the process, however long it might take, whatever cost it might be, put away some money, put away some savings. It is very much worth it. And if you're a man or woman, trust me, it doesn't matter. But me, obviously, I'm biased. I'm a husband. I'm a father. You better believe that I have now appreciated the ability to defend myself and my family for that reason. Beyond that, those of you who read the article that I wrote, you know that I've tried to be more committed to advocating and championing the Second Amendment. So please stay educated, stay informed, look at what cases may be coming up, look at what threats might be out there to the Second Amendment. Get involved. Look at your local chapters of organized of organizations that might be out there. Go to shooting ranges. Talk to people out there. Get involved. Our Second Amendment is very, very important, especially now, and we're seeing it being played out. If these local and law enforcement agencies cannot protect their citizens, we need to be able to protect ourselves. So get involved. Look at what might be out there. Pay some dues. Donate to certain organizations. Donate to candidates who are out there championing the Second Amendment. Do not just sit idly by. this is not to cause hysteria. This is not to feed the fire. This is to say we need to be able to have some type of repercussion. We need to be able to have some type of ability to counter what's going on around us. And God forbid that it gets even worse. We need to be able to counter that. Thank you for your time, guys. God bless you, and may God bless America.
Thanks for joining us once again, and we hope you'll invite your friends and family to join us in our efforts to champion conservatism for generations to come.